Hey guys, it's Nicole Harlow here, and it's our Friday live Q&A. Today we are talking about the kind of smackdown between hormonal birth control versus some natural birth control alternatives. First of all, I want to say hi to everybody who's new. If you don't know me, if this is the first time that you're meeting me, like I said, I'm Nicole Harlow. I run this program here, this live community, Girl Meets Body. I also run the Girl Meets Body YouTube channel, and I'm the founder of the Center for Menstrual and Sexual Health. So if you, like I said, welcome if you're completely new and you're just meeting me. If you're coming back again and you're a member of the group, welcome. It's really nice to have you here. Again with me live on these Fridays. So what I usually do is, and how we choose the topics is on Tuesday in the group, you'll see the question. It's called Tell Me Tuesday. So this week I asked about birth control pills. What kind of birth control are you using? Do you have any questions about it? Have you had any problems with birth control, especially with birth control pills? So I asked the question on the Tuesday. We collect the Q&A questions. I put it together, and then on Friday, I show up live for you here in the group, in the private group, to answer your questions and to do a live training for you guys. Now, if you don't watch it live, you can always watch the replays too. And I have to apologize in advance because I had something went down the wrong pipe right before I was about to go live, so I'm kind of coughing. I have to take some sips of my smoothie, which I'll actually take a second to tell you about the smoothie because it's really good. I got some on the tip of my nose. So the smoothie that I made today is a base of apple juice. That's 100% juice, but not a lot. I mean, out of this, I'd say probably that much is apple juice. Then some water, then some kefir to get some probiotics. Then I have about 1/4 cup of some hemp protein powder, which is a new thing for me. I just started using the hemp protein powder. I had been using whey protein powder for a long time, and I'm finding I like the hemp. I had a problem with vegan protein powders in the past. I had tried a pea protein powder before and it gave me massive headaches, so I think I kind of lumped hemp protein powder in the same bowl, so I was a little bit nervous to try it, but this time around I tried the hemp, no headaches. I can tell it has so much more fiber because my bowel movements are better and more formed. I know that's TMI, but this show is all about that there is no TMI. I am your BFF for all things TMI. So I put some hemp protein powder in here. I put some carrots in here, some ginger. Usually I put some greens in here like kale or spinach, but I just ran out and actually I had kale for lunch. So it's kind of didn't need to double up on the kale. And then I take my multivitamin, which I don't like swallowing pills, so I actually just open mine up and I just deposit all of the powder in there and then I blend it up. And for lunch, I had 2 fried eggs, some kimchi that I fermented this weekend. It's ready to go. It tastes really delicious for my probiotics. And then I had some sauteed kale too. Anyway, so I hope you're well. Let me know in the comments how you're doing, how your week's been, if you're looking forward to this weekend. And we will get started with the training. So today's topic, like I said, is natural versus hormonal birth control. So I'm going to start with the hormonal birth control first, and after I finish this training on the replay, I'll put in the comments anything that I talk about. I have some notes that I'm going to be, if you see me looking over, I'm looking at my notes, which are propped up behind the camera. Anything that I talk about, links to studies, things to support scientifically the things that I say, recommendations, some birth control recommendations that I have. I will put all of the links for that down below after the live training, so it will be in the comment box below. So let's start off with the biggest one, which is birth control pills. Now, there are so many women who are on birth control pills. Some are on there for purely for contraception, to not get pregnant. And, you know, I remember being in my 20s and I was on the pill. Personally, I was on the pill from the time that I started being sexually active, which was 16, until 22. So that's a big chunk of my formative years that I spent on birth control pills. And I did it because that's what you do. You know, that's what you're taught when you become sexually active, is to make sure that you don't get pregnant. So get on the pill. It seems to be like the easiest and most reliable way to do it. And as a birth control method, it is incredibly successful. You know, the failure rates are really low. You take the pill, as long as you take the pill every day, the chances are pretty high that you will not get pregnant. So there are also a lot of women who are on birth control pills for hormonal symptoms like acne, and things like that, maybe endometriosis, maybe heavy periods, for example. So the thing that you need to know about birth control, and I have a list of 5 reasons why I think that you should ditch birth control pills in exchange for a natural alternative. So in this SmackDown, I'm going to make it pretty clear from the beginning that I think the natural methods definitely come up on top, but I'm a natural health practitioner, but I think that the data also supports me. So number 1 reason to ditch the birth control pill is because it comes with some really scary side effects. These are things like blood clots, high blood pressure, things like that. So it's kind of hypertension, heart problems, and even linked with some cancers as well. But that's the big side effects. The thing is, there are also smaller side effects too, which are things like depression, weight gain, low libido. And so, you know, people don't see these as major side effects, but they can really impair your quality of life. So not only do we have the big scary side effects with birth control pills, but we also have the smaller day-to-day side effects of weight loss, low libido, and depression. And I will link a study to that too, because I just did a major study about the connection between birth control pills and depression. And it's pretty scary, you know, how many women, if you think about how many women are on birth control pills, maybe you're on birth control pills, who live day to day with these side effects of depression, low libido, etc. So that's number 1 reason to ditch the pill. And number 2 is because if you are taking birth control pills for not just contraception, but for like hormonal symptoms like hormonal acne, maybe you're taking it because you have PCOS, maybe you're taking it because you have heavy periods or endometriosis. If you're taking it for any kind of hormonal underlying symptom, it only masks the problem, really. Birth control pills don't solve the problem. They only mask the symptoms. So when you start taking birth control pills, I know that it can help you to alleviate those symptoms, but it's never really getting down to the root cause. So that's my number 2. Number 3 reason to ditch the pill is because pill bleeds are not real bleeds. A lot of women who take the pill think that they're getting a period every month, but you're actually not. It's called withdrawal bleeding. It's not related to when you take the pill. The reason why it's a fake period, it's real blood. I mean, of course you can see that it's real blood. It feels like a real period. You may get cramps like a real period, but 2 things are happening here. The first is when you take the pill, it's like going through a mini menopause. So you're basically hurtling your body into menopause. And the other thing is you're not ovulating. So it can't be a true period if you don't ovulate. So you're having anovulatory cycles that are prompted by withdrawal bleeding. So you essentially are taking fake hormones throughout the month, then you have your sugar pill week, which causes a withdrawal bleeding. You never ovulate. And the reason why I think that's bad is not only from a biological perspective, but I think it can be bad from an energetic perspective as well, because if you know me and you're familiar with my work, I am really into optimizing our body, optimizing our life based on the menstrual cycle. And in order to do that, you need to have those hormones cycling throughout the month, right? So if you're not ovulating, if you're taking birth control pills every day, that you are never getting to that place that I think is that beautiful place of ovulation. For example, when you feel great in your body, when you feel sexual and vivacious, you feel flirtatious. I think when I think of taking birth control pills, oh, thanks for the like. When I think of taking birth control pills, I think of your body as being, and your energy as being completely stagnant, static throughout the month. And what I want more to see more women tapping into is the vibrancy that comes with the parabola, you know, that comes with riding that roller coaster up and down throughout the month with the different strengths. So when you take birth control pills every day, what I see is dulling down of all of that. So you may find that your symptoms are kind of at a flat line, and maybe that feels good, but I think that you're cutting off the range of what it means to be a woman, what it means to have a cycle, what it means to have your hormones fluctuate throughout the month. And, you know, for some women, that's a scary proposition, because we live in a world that tells us that we need to be linear. And so the birth control pill fits in perfectly with that. We get to be linear every day, you know, and you can get to the end of your pills. And if you don't want to have that week of bleeding, you can change your mind and start a new pack and not bleed, and have every day, you know, just cutting off the symptoms and flattening down to this line. But I think you lose a lot in the process too. And if it feels scary to go off the pill and you're worried that your symptoms might come back again, then I recommend that you work with a practitioner, like someone like myself, you know, that does holistic hormones, that can help you naturally kind of get down into the symptoms. And I also have an online course called Unlock Your Cycle, which does just that. So I'll plonk the link to that in the comments as well, so you guys can check that out, because that's something that you can DIY, especially if you're a little bit nervous to go off the pill. So that was number 3, kind of long-winded, but pill bleeds are not true bleeds. And then it robs you of the cycle strengths and just that experience of cycling throughout the month. Number 4 reason why I think you should ditch the pill is because it impairs your fertility. And for some women, it can take up to a year to start their period again. So it's actually a rare case that people go off the pill, that women go off the pill and they get pregnant right away. For some people that does happen. It has been known to happen, but it's not the way that it happens for a lot of women. And it especially is not the way that it's happened for women who started the pill because of hormonal symptoms. So say, for example, you are like someone like myself who had polycystic ovarian syndrome, hardly ever got my period, went on the pill to regulate my period. I felt like I was getting a period every month. I didn't know at the time it was a fake period, and my body, just like when you wear glasses or contacts and your eyes get kind of weak, or if you say broke a leg, when you go off the pill, it's like learning how to walk again. It's like teaching your eyes to see again. You can't expect that when you go off the pill, and a lot of this happens to a lot of women, they take the pill until they're ready to get pregnant, they go off the pill, and it's months, maybe 6 months, maybe it's 8 months, maybe it's a year, and they're not getting pregnant. Some are not even getting periods, irregular periods, and it's like, well, what gives? It's like, what gives is that for how many years that you've been on the pill, that's how many years your body hasn't needed to ovulate. So you could have really delayed that connection between the adrenal glands that make some of our hormones, between the gonads like the ovaries and the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which are all part of this kind of triangle of hormone balance. So it's like you've got these dusty old connections that you haven't been using for 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 years, depending. So that was number 4, is it impairs your fertility, and sometimes it can impair it for a long time. And number 5, which I think really affects a lot of women, especially if you got on the pill for some kind of underlying hormonal symptom, is that when you go off the pill, your symptoms will often return with a vengeance. So what that meant for me is I went on the pill because I wasn't getting my period. When I went off the pill, I didn't get a period for a year. It took a long time. Now, granted, at the time I was 22, not living a super healthy lifestyle, so I wasn't doing a lot to support my body. And I recommend, if you are thinking about going off the pill and switching to one of these natural alternatives, which I'll talk about next, absolutely working with someone, with a health practitioner, with a natural holistic practitioner who can help you even before you go off the pill, start to like lay that good foundation. So that, and it really depends on what the underlying hormonal condition was. So let's take, for example, you went on, this is a very common one, you go on the pill because you have hormonal acne, and you decide for whatever reason, because of side effects, because you want to get pregnant, that you're going to go off the pill. What a lot of women find is when they go off the pill, their acne comes back with a vengeance. And that's because scientifically or biologically, when you go off the pill, you can often have this real spike of testosterone. And testosterone is linked with increased acne, increased sebum on the skin, especially cystic acne, if it's kind of underneath of the skin and really painful. So if you don't support your body before you go through that transition of coming off the pill, you may find yourself with that initial, like big spike, because the body is relearning how to do this. So if the body is like relearning, sometimes it's like, testosterone going up, or everything is kind of like all mixed up in your body, and you may feel really dejected and disappointed when you go off the pill and you find, oh my God, now I have this acne and I have it worse. It does get better. I promise you that it does get better. But one thing I would definitely recommend is working with somebody, reading up all that you can, really researching this before you go off the pill, so that and that things don't have to be, setting that foundation doesn't have to be completely a daunting process. Sometimes it's as simple as making sure you have a good diet, making sure that you are lowering your stress levels or finding better ways to deal with stress, making sure that you are cutting out as much alcohol as possible. You don't have to be completely ascetic, but I'm talking like limiting to 1 to 2 drinks per week max, as a treat for yourself, rather than just an everyday, like, why don't I have a glass of wine when I get out of work, for example. So diet, lifestyle changes, starting with some supplements. So it doesn't have to be completely disruptive to your life, but it can make a big difference when you do go off the pill. So that is hopefully making a good case for why you need to ditch the pill. Now, people are asking about, what about hormonal IUDs, like the Mirena coil or things like Depo-Provera shots? Are they the same? And basically, there are some gradations and there's some differences between the side effects, but for the most part, they are the same. If you're using a Mirena coil, sometimes I think that usually the hormones are a little bit less than the birth control pills, but it depends, because there's lots of birth control pills. But pretty much the symptoms are the same. And, when you do get a bleed, it's not a real bleed. It does stop ovulation. And when you have the Mirena coil taken out, for example, or you stop getting the Depo-Provera shots, or the ring, the Nuva ring as well, it will take a while for your body to just get back to homeostasis. So I lump them in in the same kind of, like with birth control pills. I'm also talking about the Mirena coil. I'm talking about Depo-Provera shots. I'm talking about Nuva rings, things like that. What I'm not talking about is the copper IUD, the non-hormonal IUD, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So that's the hormonal birth control part. Now, so what do? If you're listening to what I'm saying, you're like, yeah, right on. If you're on hormonal birth control, maybe I'm making a case to go off and try something different. Or maybe you're just kind of curious about what your alternatives are natural. Now, I'm just going to go through a list of, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 things to talk about with natural alternatives. The first one is fertility awareness method, which you may have already heard of as like FAM. A lot of people think that this is like the old school rhythm method, which doesn't work at all, or the withdrawal method, which is just like, hey, let's just like pray nothing happens. That's not it at all. Fertility awareness method is about thermosymptomatic things in your body. So there's a whole science behind it, and it's not very hard to learn. And nowadays there are apps and little gadgets and kind of cool things that will help you out with it as well. So I'm not gonna spend this, we'll do another one of these trainings where I go through all of the like how to do fertility awareness method and why it works and why it's good and who it's good for and who it's not good for. But this is just to say that this is my favorite natural method of birth control. But there's a couple things a few caveats or a few things that I'm gonna say with it. One is just to let you know, in my Unlock Your Cycle program, I actually teach about all these things, how to do it, how to take your basal body temperature, how to use fertility awareness method, not just as a contraceptive, but to figure out what problems are happening in your body. So you may not know that, like, for example, if you have a low waking body temperature every day, that's pretty, it's usually a clear indicator that you may have low thyroid, so, or problems with your thyroid. So it's amazing, all these, like, I just feel like my work is all about uncovering all these signals and patterns that are in the body that can tell us so much information, but it's really just about plugging into that system. So the program that I put together is about teaching you how to plug into that and what are the signs that you're looking for. So if you're curious about that, you can check it out. That'll help you learn the fertility awareness method. But the things that I will say is, one, I think for sure, when you're first starting out fertility awareness method, until you have really like dialed it down or dialed it in to like an exact science where you really know what's going on with your body, I would 100% use a barrier method, even on your non-fertile time. So that means like a condom, or if you have a diaphragm or something like that. So you want to make sure that you're kind of doubling up, especially if you're using this for contraception and you're not trying to get pregnant. If you're trying to get pregnant, I mean, go crazy. Fertility awareness method could just help you to know when you're more fertile and when your fertile window is. But, you know, if you're monogamous with a partner and you're trying to get pregnant and you don't want, and you're not using condoms, like, go for it. But if you're using this for contraception, especially in the beginning, I would for sure use a barrier method. Number two is, and this is a huge warning caveat, period tracker apps are awesome. I use one. I use the Clue app, but there's other ones out there. There's Glow. There's other, I can't remember. My Days is another one. Flow Tracker is another one. They're awesome, and I advise every woman to start tracking the menstrual cycle and tracking where you are, and just starting to make those connections between the symptoms. You know, this is my temperature. This is what my cervical fluid is like today. This is what my mood or my craving is, energy level, etc., whether you have a high libido or a low libido. So I think that these apps are awesome to track and collate all that information. And you can see, you know, very like clearly and prettily or beautifully all of that information kind of put down into the app. And it's just great to, you know, to have it on the go. Like if I'm traveling, I can just put it in. But I don't think that they're great indicators of your fertile window. And I see this happen time and time again on my Clue app. And I'm not singling out Clue here just to say that they're crappy, because I think this can happen for like all of the different apps. So they're using an algorithm that's not quite as precise as it could be. For example, my Clue app just told me that I ovulated 2 days ago. But I know, because I'm taking my temperature and I'm looking at my symptoms like my cervical fluid, I know that I'm ovulating today. So if I was going off of Clue, I would have thought that I was, you know, perhaps gotten out of the fertility window. So it tells me here's my kind of danger zone if you're trying not to get pregnant, or here's your great zone if you're trying to get pregnant. It would have my dates wrong, and it consistently does this every week because I know my body and I'm tracking my body. But if you don't know what to look for and you just go off of the app, you could find yourself getting pregnant accidentally because you could think you're out of the green zone. Some women ovulate really close to their menstrual cycle window. So Clue is kind of like the algorithm that they're using is it's not taking all of the factors into effect, you know, and this is not necessarily a criticism of them or the app. I'm just saying, don't rely on it completely. Don't look at it and say, oh, it's saying this is my fertile window, so I must be in my fertile window. Or now it's saying I'm in my safe zone, so let's have sex without a condom. You want to learn the process of fertility awareness, you want to give yourself 3 or 4 months if you have a regular cycle. More so if you have an irregular cycle, you want to give yourself that time to actually see the principles in action. Now, if that feels really daunting and there's a lot of steps and you don't want to learn it, I mean, I think it's useful for every woman, whether you're trying to get pregnant or not get pregnant, or if you just want to get closer to your body. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit easier, there's actually a little cool gadget called a DIYSY. It's DIYSY, and I'll put a link to it down below. And DIYSY actually does this work for you. So you take your temperature every day, but it'll give you a little green light or a little red light or a little warning light to let you know when you're in your fertile window and when you are in your safe zone, the time when you can't get pregnant. It's really well researched, it's documented, and it does work, and it's a great accompaniment for a fertility awareness method. So yeah, so you may want to check that one out. And yeah, so for fertility awareness, like I said, we can do another Q&A because there's a lot to talk about there. So I'm gonna kind of jump to the next natural alternative, but we can take time together to go back and rediscover that. Number 2 is barrier methods. I use condoms. I love condoms. People kind of bag on condoms, but you know, they're convenient and they protect you from most sexually transmitted infections. Now, there's been some really cool advancements in condoms from, like, if you're someone who doesn't like condoms and you're like, no, I tried them, didn't like it, my partner doesn't like it, they've had some really cool advancements. I'm gonna tell you about a couple brands that I really like or I recommend. One is a company called, well, it's called My One in the USA, and it's called They Fit in Europe. Not sure why they have 2 different names, but I'll put both of the links down there. This brand, they're vegan, they're natural, it's like a natural latex, and the coolest thing is they have 60 different sizes. So they have like 60 different sizes. So I think what seems like happens, I haven't tried these personally, and my partner hasn't tried them. I just have read about them, and it seems like a really cool thing. I don't know why it took so long for them to actually do this. They do different sizes by length and by width. So length and girth, and basically a man measures himself and then he can order a size condoms that actually fit. And when you have condoms that fit well, they feel really good, you know, and then you also are safer because you don't have slippage or breakage or anything like that. So I'll link those down below. I personally have used a brand called Sir Richard's, which is natural and vegan and cruelty-free. And apparently there's another brand called Glide. I'm not sure if this is where you can get these. I'll have to check that out and put that down below. But the last thing that I'll say about barrier methods for condoms is to make sure that you don't get the ones with the spermicide in them, because that can be really toxic and messy down for your lady parts. And the vaginal canal is super porous, so anything that we put inside it is just going to suck up. It's going to go right into our bloodstream. So the spermicide is really no bueno when it comes to like trying to live a toxicity-free lifestyle. I would go with the natural ones, natural leather, vegan condoms. What else do we have? We have cervical caps and diaphragms, which kind of feel like a little bit old school. I've never tried one personally, but there's a new brand called Kaya, which I'll link below. It's a diaphragm that uses a natural gel. So it used to be that diaphragms and cervical caps used like a pretty toxic spermicide that you had to put on, like you had to put it inside of it, and then you had to like put it up there over top of your cervix. And like I just said, you know, I definitely don't recommend spermicides for women to use with any kind of birth control method, but this seems like a pretty cool brand, Kaya. So if you're curious about trying out a diaphragm and maybe you don't like condoms and you're starting with FAM and you're not really sure of the principles yet, so you want to give yourself some time, that could be a good thing, you know, to try out the Kaya diaphragm and see how it works for you. I personally never tried the cervical caps or diaphragms just because my uterus is retroflex actually. It kind of tilts backwards. And I find that insertable things like tampons, menstrual cups, penises, they don't always go in the right place, because rather than tilting forward, which is how most uteri are tilted forward, if you're retroverted and it tilts back, it kind of goes up and then it sharply, especially retroflex, has like a little, it's like your uterus goes back and it's kind of curved on the end. So things can go up and back. And I just found that things that I put inside don't usually like stay where they're supposed to, because they're not really designed for a retroflex or retroverted uterus. So like a menstrual cup is great, but it will leak sometimes because it's like not quite in the right place. Tampons for me leak all the time because they're just like not where they're supposed to be. Yeah, so if you want to try it, and if you do try it, definitely let me know, because I'd love to hear some firsthand accounts of what it's like to use one of these. And then lastly, for the natural alternatives is a copper IUD. I did have a copper IUD. I had it for around my mid-20s. I think after I stopped using the birth control a few years later, I had it for about 3 or 4 years. I had gotten it when I was in the UK. The pros of the copper IUD are, one, when you have it fitted, you can have it for 5 to 10 years. It's kind of expensive if you get it in the US, but if you are in the UK or somewhere that has a free healthcare, then it can be really good. You know, for me, it was free to get it in the UK. It was free to get it taken out too. Smoothie break. Another pro is it doesn't disrupt your hormones. You still cycle normally, naturally. You get a period every month. You ovulate every month. It doesn't impair fertility. So when you get the IUD taken out, so this is the copper. This is not the hormonal Mirena coil. This is the copper one. It's a copper T. So when you get it taken out, you're fertile, you know, from the next day. Like whenever you're ready to ovulate, you can get pregnant. The cons are insertion can be painful for a lot of women. For me, it was definitely painful, not painful enough to cry or scream or anything, but definitely painful to like grip the side. It was about as painful as maybe getting a biopsy or something like that. And then there was a lot of cramping afterwards. But it was nice for 3 or 4 years to not have to worry about birth control, not have to worry about getting pregnant. It was nice in a monogamous relationship to have sex without condoms, things like that. I did appreciate it. A con for a lot of women, which I experienced as well, was heavier periods. Up until this point, I wasn't somebody who had heavy periods. I had like I said, I had PCOS. So I had very light periods. I hardly needed a tampon. So it was a pretty shocking surprise to suddenly like have like a full-on heavy period with a lot of cramps too. Another con is some women can feel it. I felt it. Sometimes when I was in the middle of having sex, I would feel it. Sometimes my partner would feel it. So, you know, not everybody feels it, but in my body, I did feel it. And I think the last con is it can cause some copper sensitivity in women, which has its own unique symptoms that comes from that. And then I think that it can cause some inflammation in the uterus. And there's other side effects as well, like the more harsh side effects like uterine perforation or infections, pelvic inflammatory disorder, things like that. I'm just talking about like the smaller cons that like your average woman is might see. You know, I think that there's the inflammation, you know, I think comes from just having something in the uterus, you know, just having a foreign body. And that's actually part of the reason why it works, is because when you have the copper IUD in your uterus, you have a bunch of white blood cells that come down and try to fight this invader. And those white blood cells can kill sperm, you know. And there's also something about the copper reaction with sperm too, but I think part of it is the inflammation and part of it is having the white blood cells and your body's immune system, you know. But what we're learning a lot in health right now is about how damaging inflammation can be for the body, whether that comes from our diet or our lifestyle choices, and how chronic inflammation, how bad it is for our hormones too. So it's for those reasons that I don't feel like I can fully give a thumbs up or a recommendation for the copper IUD, but for some women it can be, you know, the best out of these. I think personally a combination of fertility awareness method. You know, if you're buying the DIYSY, for example, I would feel pretty confident if I knew that you were using the DIYSY every day for a few months, and then using no barrier method if you're in a monogamous relationship with somebody that you trust and you're not really that concerned or worried about STIs. For other women, a combination of fertility awareness method with barrier methods like natural condoms, the Diaphragm, something like that. But yeah, if you have any additional questions about birth control pills, natural health, things like that, or if you want to work with me privately about coming off of birth control, perhaps you're like ready to get pregnant, or you've been on it so long that you're just worried what you're going to find on the other side of going off of birth control pills, definitely reach out to me and we can have a consultation. I can help you through it. So anyway, I hope you appreciated this live Q&A this Friday. Have a great weekend, guys. And also, if you're watching the replay and you're not watching this live, you can see this inside of the Girl Meets Body group. So I'll leave the link down below and you can join us, and then you can participate live on Fridays, answer the questions on Tell Me Tuesday, ask any questions, and then I will answer your questions live on the air. It was great spending time with you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.